Good evening and a very warm welcome to Capital Sports 3.0. I'm doing that to try and keep up with the YouTube boxers who, you know, if we had our hands on them, myself, Eastwood and Andrew Flint here this evening, we would put some manners on them and maybe knock some brain cells into their heads. That's going to be a topic in just a few minutes, but we're going to start off talking about Jurgen Klopp and why I know it's me. I've brought this together that he is on the road to be sacked. We're watching the game with United earlier this week with Andy Mack and a friend of ours, Danny Smith, who's a Liverpool fan. We were looking to see how they were going to react to United. They reacted very badly. They lost. I'd already said the club is not going to make it to the end of the season. We'll discuss that, debate that in just one moment. Then, of course, we'll have, speaking about this fake boxing, it just really... I'll leave it to Isel can describe it far better than I can, as in insult it far better than I can. Then we'll have our hot topics. We'll have part 2 of our 3-part series with Joe Papp. This is really well worth listening to. He talks about his near-death experience. He talks about then having to give evidence against Floyd Landis. I can't say against, but it was part of the case against Floyd Landis. And then we speak with Sean Kelly, who is a huge hero of mine, and not a role model, but a hero, someone who achieved great things on the world stage in cycling. And he's going to sort of break that down a little bit as well. Then we speak about motor doping, which is also extremely important. And basically, like what happens when your hero angels have very muddy faces. And finally, we will have the Big Fat Filthy quiz after our sort of recap and discussion. So I'm delighted to welcome in right away to the show. Before we start off with Jurgen Klopp, Isel Cody and Andrew Flint, my co-hosts. First of all, Andrew, great to see you. You're looking very, very well from your break. You seem to have regained sanity after a little break from Capital Sports.
Yeah, I'm much we all love the madness that is Capital Sports. Sometimes a bit of a breather does a bit of good. Bit of holiday. Excruciating heat in Turkey, so that's probably where the pounds have dropped off, to be honest. But delighted to be back with the greatest football team on the planet represented.
Okay, Isel, now you have to talk about the true greatest football team in the planet, of course, that is Tottenham Hotspur. You look great. You look like you're going out to a ball or something. You look like a Disney princess.
Well, like if you could see 3/4 of this outfit is actually covered in husky hair, because you should never wear black if you own huskies, especially not a blonde husky. Andrew has just given out about the heat. As an Irish person, my gut is to sympathise with him because we don't like seeing the sun. But you've been on holiday, man. Keep it together.
That is true.
Yeah, fair point.
That is very true. So we'll start off, as I mentioned, of course, we have a fairly interesting show, a lot to go through. And I'm going to run through one thing. It was our kind of promo for tonight's show before we go through. And this is, I'm going to put forward a case of why Jurgen Klopp his days are numbered at Liverpool. Here we go.
Good. Good.
I don't know. I saw nothing.
I really don't like this. I'm really disappointed. I have to say. Hoffentlich.
Now, of course, Jurgen has 4 more years on his contract. He's getting a lot of money for doing what he does and doing what he loves. Of course, is coaching football. However, the situation is this. He has spent a lot of money. The money has not been coming back in. The results have not been good in the pitch. The people around him are, I will say, snakes. So, guys, if you just give me a moment, I'm going to outline why Jurgen is for the chop. First of all, he has something called the 7-year itch. Okay, this is explained to me by 2 people who worked with him. One is a friend of his for long standing who said he has a 7-year itch. Now, I've met Jurgen on a number of occasions based in Germany, when I was in Germany. Great guy. I have, as a person, I have the greatest respect for him. I think he's very, very good. As a football coach, I think he's awesome. He is a sociopath, as in he really wants to win. But there is a depth there that he also, I would say it's almost like bordering on religious, because he's a mix of Lutheran and Catholic. That's not a good mix in any case, but in most senses, but he really tried to bring that forward. So he spent an awful lot of money for I'm sorry, the guys are laughing at me. So he spent a lot of money. They have lost in his time almost $200 million on transfer fees. Now, people, the sort of the finance bros and the sort of the experts will say, well, he made so much money back and he's made the money. Yes, they have a successful getting to the Champions League and winning and so on, but the transfer dealings are where it counts for the Fenway Sports Group. He has not been happy with the players that he's been given. He has wanted different players, more players, and the difficulty in Liverpool, okay, at Liverpool FC, is there are people who are involved in the Fenway Sports Group, their partners, people involved in the club who are telling tales to the owners. Okay, so this is where the biggest problem is. He's not a man in control of his own destiny. Another issue for Jurgen as well is that he's become bigger than the club. He is now Liverpool, and he doesn't like that. It's a huge amount of pressure, and he also sees that long term, it's not going to work. Okay, he has brought the club as far as he could, and now it's time to step back. He did it at Dortmund. At Mainz, he was lucky he got out just after he made a small club into a decent club, a Bundesliga top level club, but. With Dortmund, he brought them as far as he could, and he realised he had to get out because people were selling players for him. He got an ex-Man U player, Henrik Mkhitaryan. He was brought into the Borussia side. It wasn't what he wanted. Ultimately, the case is down to Jurgen. He is at the point now that he has run out of patience, and my thesis is that. Due to the interference in the transfer policies, due to the pressure coming out from the club, due to internal arguments he's had with the club, he's had a huge falling out with the chairman of the club of Liverpool. This in May, this is all boiling down to a point where he just is going to say, "Okay, genug," which is enough in German, and he will leave. He also has some really not nice people there with him that he has brought in. One of them is an assistant coach who is doing his best to undermine him, and he has the ear of the chairperson of the club. So I'll start off not with a Man U fan. Isolt, am I too far-fetched with this idea?
Okay, so I suppose there's a lot of interesting points you've raised there. I think obviously the Liverpool match was actually not shown on TV here on any of the main stations, and as big a win as this weekend was for them in terms of the goal scoring, it was against a team that they should be beating every day of the week. So let's not take that for anything more. But the discussion was that one of the owners was in attendance, or someone from the Fenway Group, which I think speaks volumes about the position in terms of on the back of the United result. That if they have someone coming over straight away, what does that suggest? Was it a planned attendance, or is this a message being sent to the sideline and the dressing room that they were not impressed with what went on the week before in terms of the result against United? There are also still 4 days left in the transfer window, and it doesn't look like anything is going to come Liverpool's way to bolster up a squad that, when you strip it back, let's just ignore yesterday's result and treat it like what it was. Is there the depth of players with the injuries that they need? And if this is always going to be a case of a team that are going to come second or do well in the Champions League, is that what the owners actually want? Are they aiming for the Champions League, or are they aiming for Premier League success? And if you are aiming for Premier League success, if it's a battle between Klopp and Pep, there's only going to be one winner in terms of not just coaching prowess, and I'm not suggesting that's it, but in terms of who is going to have the bigger resources. And I think that it also boils down to the fact of, does Klopp want to be forever number 2 to Pep? Because it's not just, when you say about the 7-year itch, we all know about Pep's ability to go on rotation. That's always been his approach. Would you always want to be coming second? And I think Klopp also has an ego, and let's not treat him like he doesn't. Do I think he's a great manager? Yes. Do I think he has possibly got the best out of the Liverpool team that he can get compared with other teams? Yes. Liverpool have exceeded, under his stewardship, what I think they are capable of as a group in terms of compared with their teams. Also, he plays certain players, we had this discussion in our house on Friday night, in the wrong position. And gets away with it. So it's him as a manager is a great thing. Do I think Liverpool have a team that can beat Man City repeatedly over a number of years to make them the team of this era? No. And Klopp won't change that.
This is it. Andrew, we said on air, I stuck to it that every single year, 2017, Man City would win it. We said it at the start of the season after a few games. 2018, Man City would win it. 2019, if you remember, we only reported on second place. That we only spoke about who's going to finish second, who's going to finish second. I know we covered Spurs a lot because it was like Spurs were fighting, we're up on top of the table and hunting for, a Champions League spot. 2020, I published an article and we spoke about it on air with expert people like Jonathan Higgins, for example, and Peter Staunton, that Liverpool were a busted flush. They weren't going to win. We predicted everything was going to happen. Last year, we predicted Man City were going to win. Now, I know we had a bit of a tussle with Andy Mack, who really wanted to sort of like needle me and just hope that I would fail. But I just saw what Liverpool were doing. I saw what was going on. But is it a case that Jurgen will walk, or will he be stabbed in the back?
I can't see him walking. I mean, look, he sort of covered some very, very important points to bear in mind of this. A large part of his current and potentially future Liverpool career is guided by his rivalry with Manchester City. They're the only realistic rivals that Liverpool have. The problem being that Manchester City are just an absolute machine. And I can't look. Jurgen Klopp functions on the power of personality, and it is infectious if he's on your side. The players clearly respond to him, and I don't think he's really going to walk into another job where he'll get quite so much control. Now, you mentioned the size of Klopp becoming as big as, if not bigger than, the club itself. I don't think I quite agree with that, but he's not going to be as big as he is at Liverpool anywhere else, and I think his ego won't be fed by changing scenery. Now, the thing is, will he be satisfied? Well, like you say, will he be satisfied with second place? Liverpool have potential to challenge Manchester City every year, but I think one thing we need to bear in mind is you mentioned the transfer policy. The recruitment that Liverpool have done has, on the whole, you'd have to say, been very, very good over the last 7 years. And one key part of that, leaving Liverpool, Michael Edwards, I think is a very, very important part of it, because I don't think Liverpool would have been left in this position if he was still there. The midfield is a problem. We saw that against Manchester United. A midfield three of Harvey Elliott will become a very good player, no doubt, but James Milner can only do so much. Jordan Henderson is not a creator, and suddenly you've got a deadwood midfield. Now, when the players are all fit and Jurgen Klopp's in the right mood and the grass is not too dry for him and the wind isn't too windy and all that, then look, I joke about it, but those little comments that people laugh at, then they laugh again, and then you think, well, hang on a minute, we're laughing quite regularly now. How much of that is him playing to the gallery? I think a part of it is, but I'm actually starting to think, hang on a minute, he's using these jokey excuses quite a lot, and this is starting to undermine his actual ability. He is a phenomenal coach. He is a phenomenal motivator, and for those reasons, I don't think he'll walk, and I don't think he will. I don't think it's possible to stab him in the back either. However much people behind the scenes may want him out, it's very hard to remove Jurgen Klopp. He is immensely popular, understandably, with Liverpool fans. The question is, where does he go from here? There aren't many options.
No, and this is it, because we have a question have come in before. I want to play another clip. A question's come in from friends of ours in Verona. Just said, does Jurgen have a place to go? Maybe Russia. Now, of course, this is the issue that I raised as well today in an article, that there's no way, no other team in England, like Newcastle, did make an approach. They sounded out his agent. The agent said no, no, he wouldn't go. And I don't think it was down to feeling dodgy about Saudi money, because the Fenway Sports Group have investments on things that also raise hairs in the back of your head. The other issue as well is that there's no one in Italy going to take him. Barcelona could try to break the bank, but that means he's going to step into Pep's old shoes. Same with Bayern Munich. Eintracht Frankfurt, who he used to be involved with would love to get him, but they're not going to break the bank as well. China, there's not going to be very much in there. Maybe America, but he's still quite young. And the German national job, he's around 5 years away from that at least. The plan that, according to one of his oldest friends, is that when he finishes his contract this time in Liverpool, he would go out to that. Quick question for both before I play a small clip and then come back to this to round it off. Andrew, start with you because you were last. Does he have a place to go? Can another club afford him?
Well, no, in short, I don't think. When I said where do you go from here, what I really actually meant was where do you go from here with Liverpool? Where could anybody realistically take Liverpool from here? And I'm not talking with my Manchester United fan hat on there. I genuinely am not. But when you got such a one-dimensional rivalry, and I don't see it as a true rivalry in the sense that, we grew up with 20 years ago. I was lucky. I grew up with the Arsenal-Manchester United rivalry, and that was a proper battle. Not because they were the two best teams. They probably were, but there were so many teams that were competing, keeping it each on their toes. But Manchester United and Arsenal had the edge. There's nobody really realistically pushing from behind, and yet can he overtake Manchester City? No. So where can he go? Being runners-up to Manchester City is no disgrace. Will he win the Champions League? I think there's a chance he could do. I mean, that probably is his most realistic chance of success. But
no, Premier League, I think it's gone. Isolt, now Isolt, you need to turn the light because you're getting very, very dark unless you're getting tan as we're going on. What do you reckon? Is there a place for him to go?
Let me multitask. So I will turn this light down in a minute because it's a bit hard. In terms of when you're saying where does he go? My concern isn't that he's suddenly going to start beating City, because let's be realistic. My concern is he has two options. There's to consistently win the Champions League so you're considered a success, which isn't going to happen consistently. Or the bigger concern is you start to no longer be number 2. You go to 3, you go to 4, and that's the problem. Your only way is down, in a way that Pep's only way is to go, oh, things aren't going great. Let's look to see what we can bring in or what we can change. Like, City are a team that when they go behind, you never feel, even when they're 2-0 down, you're going, oh, they're going to win this. Like, there's never that doubt. And I think the concern for Liverpool is that Liverpool have the potential to take losses against teams that aren't in their league in terms of talent or in terms of what they have in the back room. And realistically, where can Klopp go? PSG? Is that it? Is that the option?
And then what? He'll win. He'll saunter to Ligue 1 and he will win a Champions League.
So if we say about him going, and I know I'm going on here, but if we say about him going into the German job, like, if you don't want to go from a Liverpool team that are consistently number 2 to your national squad. You need to leave on a high. So the options for him are win the Champions League and go, this is a high, and walk away now because I'm on a high, or else he's on a low point. And it's very difficult because it's not reflective. In any other era, he would be the manager of the moment. The problem is Pep is just Pep.
That's it. And look, it's also in every sense he's second to Pep, because Pep is the highest paid manager in the English Premier League by 3 million sterling more than him. Going to play this clip and then we'll finish off this segment, which is a very, very quick hot take from both of you before we go on to the fake boxing nonsense. So here we go. This is October 2014 or 15, excuse me, right after Brendan Rodgers had been fired by Liverpool. The problems then have not changed. This is the thing that we have to understand. Everything that's happened then, the same people are involved, the same people are in charge, the same people are working at the club. Nothing, trust me, nothing has changed. And this has been a frustration for many people who are involved in the club for many, many years, especially in the footballing side. So just listen to what they have to say, because this is coming from inside. First is Thierry Henry. I have to spit that out of my mouth. And as I said, it's not just me. I've worked in football and I know what goes on. And I saw, for example, with Jörg Berger in Eintracht Frankfurt, how he was undermined by people within the club. And the whole thing was, he needs to push the players harder. He's being too nice. He's a kind of a rescue. He comes in, he's a firefighter. He rescues the teams when they're down in the relegation positions. And they got rid of him and brought in a guy who I mean, I'll leave it for now, but like people would know from one of his last coaching jobs in Fulham, ex-German international, very good guy. And his first statement to the media was, I'm going to make these players work. They've had it too easy under the previous coaching people. I'm going to make them work, which is a pure nonsense. It was absolute nonsense. The player was fit. There was a fit before he came in as when he was eventually fired. Andrew, long and short of it, is there going to be a Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool this time next year, or will he be gone, fired, or what?
I think he'll still be there. He'll still be doing a very good job. I just don't think he will have overtaken Pep by then, because who can? I think he'll still stay.
I'm going to I feel the need to point this out. If Jamie Carragher had a Manchester accent, that speech he's just given before Klopp came in could be Gary Neville giving a speech about every Manchester United managerial appointment since Fergie, in terms of what's going on in the background. And it's ironic. Do I think he'll be there? I think it all depends on the Champions League this year. I think Klopp is not an idiot. I think he knows the Premier League. If he doesn't win it this year, he's going to know that that's the way it's going to continue, realistically. And I think if you win something like the Champions League, you go out on a high, because stay around, because the only way you were going is down. And I think he's too good a manager to be remembered or associated with failure.
That is a very good point, actually. Yeah, because he is a winner in every sense, and he's not someone who basically you would consider as falling apart. So, okay, we're going to move on to the second part of the show. We're going to take a very, very extremely short break. So my apologies for this, because we're on time. So we're just going to take a little break. You guys are going to mute their mics and be back in literally 1 minute.
Blazing. JJ really going to work early and just wanted this guy. He hit him with he's down. He's down. But Pineda is claiming back of the head. Oh. What on earth?
I think he's overwhelmed by the moment, guys. I think he's just in too deep.
Unfortunately, this is what happens when you get opponents who are in no way ready for this level. Oh my God, this is embarrassing.
What is going on?
The problem is the two worst opponents of the night came in KSI's fights, and that's the two. This guy just doesn't belong here. Mate, get him out of there, man.
Okay, that was a guy, Xi JJ, whatever the hell his name was, Olajidi. He is a YouTube guy. He does his rap. He's part of that sort of little group with Jake Paul, Logan Paul, and I forget some other sort of like guys who, make news by saying strange things on YouTube. I guess we do the same thing as well. Isolt, watching that, the guy came in apparently from Mexico. The amount of absolute, quite xenophobic, rather racist statements by the commentators that like he's the weakest Mexican they've ever seen, using Mexicans to take a beating and so on and so forth. It was really repulsive to actually. I sat through the replay of that one fight, 2 fights last night. But this is pure nonsense. I mean, I'm sorry, this isn't boxing. This is guys, I don't know what the hell it is. So explain to me, please.
So I'm just going to be very clear. I have no issue. I think white collar boxing is a great thing. I have no issue with, I'm going to say Jake Paul. Jake Paul is training like a fighter, and he's fighting opponents who might actually be, they're basically journeymen, or potentially some of the guys he calls out from YouTube is a different kind of story. But he's fighting actual boxers. I have a huge issue with the idea that we are calling it boxing. And I know KSI has now set up a new company, Misfits Boxing, where the idea is you can call someone out, and I listened to him talking about this last week. You can call someone out because you're a YouTuber and you have beef, or what you'd like to call beef, with another YouTuber, and you call them out. But you're not fighters. you're not training in this way consistently, and instead you have someone like KSI who's obviously got a bit of ability, or at least is training, fighting some guy who shouldn't be in a ring with him. The fact that he was able to have 2 fights in one night against two knockouts, if you want to call it that, it's absolutely ridiculous. And what it actually does is it doesn't promote the sport of boxing. It may bring new eyes in, which I have no issue with. What it actually does, it gives the impression that boxing isn't a sport that needs absolute dedication by the participants. And I hate the idea that you could be another YouTuber who has no interest in fighting, but there's almost like a bullying aspect that if someone calls you out, like KSI, you have to get in the ring with him. Like, at what point do we stop and go, this is schoolyard bullying? And it's nonsense. Facts from the sport of boxing. Call it white collar boxing. Don't pretend that this is boxing. Jake Paul, I'm putting him to an extent in a different category purely because I think he's got to the level of an okay novice boxer. He's not a professional.
No, but this is it. So then they had something yesterday called the ICB World Boxing Championship. I think it's the Internet Championship. I don't know what the hell it is.
You're not dangerous, and it gives people the wrong impression. It detracts not only from the sport of boxing, but it gets to a stage where everyone thinks they can box. Boxing is an art form, but it's also one that has potential life-altering consequences if it goes wrong.
Isel, we've spoken with this in terms of doping in boxing, doping in MMA and boxing. We have spoken with people who are involved in just like how amazingly dangerous it is. Because same in rugby, in soccer, let Liverpool or Man City, whoever it is, or Man United, let them take whatever they want to be superpowered. But they're not going to really kill other people. But in boxing, you have someone else's life in your hands. Andrew, I mean, this thing last night, I mean, this is one of the headlines from an MMA, which I don't have a huge lot of time for MMA, but this is like KSI, I thought it was KSI Miami, wipes out two overmatched opponents by knockout in the same night, admits he needs more time before Jake Paul fight. Now, I think he's already drawn or beaten the brother of Jake Paul, Logan Paul. I mean, this guy from Mexico came in, supposedly with 2-5 record, 2 wins, 5 defeats. He lost his 4 previous fights coming into it. The thing that I noticed as well, Isolt, and I'm sick with Andrew on this one, but I noticed that KSI, or whatever his name is, he was punching around the back of the head. It was really sloppy stuff. Novice amateur stuff, not just novice pro stuff. So this is what got to me. I was like, and the referee just didn't do anything. Eventually, the referee said, "Stop punching the back of the head." And I'm thinking, but no, he actually thumped the fella in the back of the head. You know, sorry, Andrew. This whole thing of calling out on YouTube and all this kind of nonsense and tomfoolery, is it just a bit of fun, or is it going to get dangerous at some point?
Well, it would be a bit of fun if they were vaguely evenly matched. I mean, look, just watching that clip alone, I mean, you guys are the boxing experts. You understand the technique. I don't understand every fine detail, but anybody watching that, you're not going to be drawn into the sport of boxing there. You're there to see someone beat someone else up. And I think Isel made a really, really good point. Look, if you say this is verging on bullying or is bullying, you'll get a whole swathe of people who say, "Oh, stop being a snowflake." That's what people say in the modern day. But this really is. This is beyond bullying. This is dangerous for the boxers. Well, very, very poor boxers. You mentioned his record 2-5, but the sport of boxing itself. Look, I love sport. I would love to be drawn into boxing, and I would love to see contests that are even. That's what sport is. If it's just so one-sided that it wasn't even one-sided, it was just concerning. The kid looks terrified. I mean, look, the whole concept of these two, when they first started shouting at each other on YouTube and said, "All right, come on, let's slap each other about a bit," the YouTubers would love that. And if it stayed in the YouTube realm of fighting each other, fighting other YouTubers, well, I don't think anybody can really complain with that. Trying to, like Isel said, trying to call it boxing is disrespectful to the sport. It's disrespectful to the people whose livelihoods depend on it. It's disrespectful to people who love it. But also, it's dangerous. I mean, it's not fun.
Yeah.
That wasn't fun to watch. That was just worrying, to be quite frank with you.
No, you're right. It is worrying that. I mean, we'll close off on this. I mean, sorry, just as basically it was rabbit punches. Sorry, just like Arthur written in that it is rabbit punches. So thank you very much. That's exactly what it is. Rabbit punches in the back of it. But it was really ridiculous. Isel, I agree with white collar boxing. I actually coached boxers for this as well, for white collar boxing. I was involved in it, and I mean, as an amateur, I had fought two. I've never fought more than three, but I fought 2 fights a night, 3-minute rounds. It was tough going, and if it's serious, I mean, this is beyond. Again, it's bad. But what can, you see Barry Hearn and people Eddie Hearn promoting it. Can someone not just say stop? Can the authorities not ban it?
So a big thing is about eyes in the sport. When it comes down to regulation and who authorizes these fights and licenses them, it's a different story. So they're not necessarily. This was a big issue with the likes of Rio Ferdinand couldn't fight professionally, because he wasn't given his license. But this is why they're going out of their way to set up, like KSI setting up his own company, Misfits or whatever. Because if you take the time to move away and you have the money and resources to set up new brands, you can pretty much avoid a lot of the regulation, and that's the problem. Prize fighting in and of itself is still actually technically illegal, so you could look into that from a legal perspective, but you need very deep pockets. I suppose my concern is, why not put headgear on? Why not look at the people who are, if you want to have guys fight each other, just be considerate as to who's fighting who. Anyone who can fight 2 people on one night and beat both of them, he's not fighting people who have a like ability. And even though he may be learning the sport, there are huge concerns out there. Like, you and I can drive cars. That doesn't mean we think we can drive in a Formula 1 race. And we need to, I would try, but there is a disparity, and we need to look at, it's not about the KSIs of this world. It's about the guys who are in the ring with him. There needs, like, those guys are getting a payday. And Barry Hearn, Eddie Hearn, any of these guys, Frank Warren actually has been quite vocal. He doesn't like it, yet when it was potentially Tommy Fury, he was potentially okay with it. But the idea is that they're getting eyes in the sport and they're seeing money, and they're not looking at, like, we don't protect boxers in general. We have to do enough. We need to do more for the existing participants before we bring in a new group who don't know what they're doing in a ring.
Yeah, look, that's it. And we all know from following boxing. I mean, I remember saying with a friend of myself, Nanny Max, that if you put down a boxing card for me, just say, let me have a look at it, I can tell you the results the whole way through. Because you see someone who'll come in with a record of 12 wins and 4 defeats, and he's coming in against like a 5-0 fight, 5 wins and no losses fighter, and think, oh, this could be good. He's got more experience. Yeah, the 12 guys. Yeah,
and like, you're like, this guy literally at one of the American fight, a guy was roped in at the weigh-in for his first professional fight against Fraser Clark. He was
the big fat lad, yeah.
So, like, that's professional boxing, elite level, and that's what they're doing.
No, but he said I've done it where I've gone down to work the corner of another fighter that I was coaching, and then they said, would you jump in, we need someone to come in. Now, I'd already been training, I was fit, and I walked in an amateur fight, 3 2-minute rounds. One even where I had a club spar where the guy said, like, we need someone, could you come in? He's around like 10, 12 kilos heavier, and you can just come in and move around him. Yeah, but it's an amateur fight. It was well controlled, headgear on. Okay, headgear don't huge amount of pressure, but still, it's there. At least it looks the part. But it's an amateur thing, and it's something that at least I got in to fight a decent fighter, but I already had a lot of experience. Not that it was my first ever fight. Andrew, we'll end up on this because we're getting lots of comments in. Actually, one from Cian. Cian, how are you doing? He said, okay, this is good. The amount of guys that think they can box, it's amazing. The amount of crossover fights happening. Barry Hall, ex-AFL player, does something similar. It's just dangerous, plain and simple. There's a lot of players, New Zealand rugby players, soccer players, of course, have been doing it as well. But boxing or any kind of fighting is a very difficult sport. Again, as he said, like, I would even go even further. You can drive a car fine. It's like putting someone up on a horse for the first time and say, go ride the Grand National. That's what it's like getting into boxing, because you're going to die. You are going to die. Andrew, quickly on this, it looks like it's make a lot of money. Would you go in and do 3 3-minute rounds with Andy Mack for a showdown if he called you out in the morning?
Well, it depends what the 3 3-minute rounds were. If it was how many beef steaks you can eat in Harrods pub in Moscow, then I'll probably win that one hands down. But no, I think, yeah, and Andy Mack's got a bit of sporting experience. I wouldn't fancy that, I have to be honest. No, I mean, look, for a big payday, no, I wouldn't. I'll be quite honest, I wouldn't. I mean, I'd rather pick my battles where I can actually fight a battle. If it's a battle where it's not even actually a contest, what's the point? I genuinely don't get it. But money talks, and people are spoken to, and they're swayed by it.
That's it. No, you're right. I mean, just one point before we go out. Just one more. Sorry, I know we've got in the chat. Oh, Andy Mack said that it's on. All right, there we go. Andy Mack has said it's on. It's been official call out. I'll organise it. It'll be on.
Bring it on then. All right, we're going.
We'll see it. A question came in from Arthur in the US. So does anyone? Well, a couple of things. Boxers are fit because if you're not fit, you get hit more. That is true. Retired boxers told me that. And you asked, anyone remember Terry Marsh? Yes, Terry Marsh, the fighting fireman from, I think it was from East London or something like that. Yeah. Superb fighter. Like, he was actually a fireman and fought his way to a world title as well. I think he got out as well. I think he might have only won or lost one fight or so, 2 fights, but he got out actually pretty well. So, okay, we're going to take a quick break right now. Honest, Isel, have you any more to say about this fake boxing, Lark?
No, I would just actually, Terry Marsh is a great example. I'm not saying that boxers can't have careers outside boxing. I just don't like the idea of boxing being diminished in the sense that we literally suggest just because you're on YouTube you can box, and just because you have the ability to call someone out in a large audience that it's fair or that it's right. Boxing is a skill and it's a talent that should be recognized for that. We don't do enough to support actual boxers. Let's not jump on the KSI train. Yeah,
I'm up with that. So Arthur, thank you very much for the feedback as well. Right, we're going to go out to a break. The three of us are going to watch part 2 with Joe Papp. It is very, very interesting. He's going to start off speaking about a near-death experience that he had. I mean, when I read about this and I spoke with somebody who was there with him at the time, it's terrifying. Also, but then Floyd Landis, and of course, then we talk about medium vendettas, and the medium vendetta is more to do with, how to say, nationality. And we kind of make a joke at the end of it, but this is a common theme especially in cycling. You know, let's put all aside, when it comes to cycling, the media is largely dominated by European-based, non-English speaking countries, and they're extremely powerful. From La Gazzetta dello Sport, from Gazzetta Figaro, I kind of just blanked the French one, but basically they control the whole thing, and it's very Eurocentric and non-English speaking Eurocentric as well. So we'll go to the break right now and then come straight back with Joe Papp in just one moment. No, that's something like, Joe, you have spoken about that. You've spoken about too many, and I've listened to and I've read what you said about the dangers of doping, because you nearly died because of doping. And not in the way that people think you have a heart, like I always complain, have a heart attack, or have a issue with, sort of a brain aneurysm or something like that. You died because you fell.
And fell at about maybe 10 miles an hour going uphill, in the final few hundred meters of a race that was just down the street from our team hotel. Like, the most innocuous crash ever. Didn't have a scrape on me. I landed on my backside basically. Didn't really even feel it. Finished the race, and then maybe an hour or a couple hours later, at the team hotel, maybe an hour later, suddenly realized that I was beginning to experience pain, and my backside, my gluteal muscle was swelling, and endured it for another hour. Then before I told the soigneur, I said, I need to go to the hospital. Something is dreadfully wrong. And turned out I was bleeding internally because my hematocrit had been so high that then I had been administered blood thinners basically to ensure that I didn't have a heart attack or a stroke or something like that. But then when I fell down, my blood wasn't clotting, and it was just bleeding into the muscle tissue and bleeding and bleeding and bleeding.
What was it like when that happened, Joe? I mean, what was going through your mind? apart from Oh Holy Jesus?
I'll tell you what, that was a moment where like there was that kind of pain. It really centers your mind, and it stripped away any like notion of trying to hide what I had done or mislead the doctors about why I was in that condition. And this was a public hospital in Italy, and doping was, even at that point, I think, criminalized. So there was every incentive to like not admit to it. But I said, this is what I've done. This is what my blood value was. This was when I took the anticoagulant or the blood thinners, and please help me. I don't want to I don't want to die.
Okay. On that, I mean, you were then involved giving evidence, not against, but about doping in the trial of Floyd Landis. And most people, I remember Floyd Landis, I barely remember when he was riding with US Postal and Lawrence Armstrong. I remember seeing him, but he wasn't, Armstrong was Armstrong.
Right.
And I remember watching Armstrong when I was living in Croatia at the time. I was thinking, he's a bit too good to be true. Floyd Landis then wanted to get to that level. But before we go on that, did you know Floyd from, say, your amateur days? Like, did you
I knew him. I knew of him, and I knew who he was. He definitely didn't know me, but he was a Pennsylvania guy too, a few years older than me. And I remember, when we were younger amateurs, because he started in mountain biking, but that guy was legit. He had a reputation as a phenomenal athlete. Whereas Lance, I don't think he really had that same kind of reputation. Lance had a reputation for being, an animal, like, psychologically, but Floyd was, that guy was a truly a raw, like, genuine talent. And yeah.
I remember when in 2006, when he went on to win the Tour de France, and I keep thinking it's called the Tourmalet, but it wasn't called the Tourmalet. It was one of the mountain stages when he literally just took off up the mountain, and it was quite, it was quite unbelievable how he did it. And he finished that. He won. I think he won the stage and went on to win. But you could almost feel the media going to nail him, and especially European media. Do you think it was just a case that they were kind of sick of English-speaking cyclists winning, and they wanted their own kind of French, Belgian, Dutch, German, and Russian dopers back? Floyd was a scapegoat, for example.
Right. Yeah. No. I don't. Floyd didn't need the media to come after him for him to test positive, right? Like, at the end of the day, like, he was guilty of doping, and the scrutiny of the media certainly made it more difficult for him to defend himself, I think. But I don't know. I remember that era. I remember the hostility from L'Equipe and some of the other, like La Gazzetta and whatnot. But the guy was a good racer. He was a great racer, great talent. And I hope journalists aren't so cynical that they'd try to, not create a story, but, advocate for their particular nation's doper to be the winner as opposed to some other nations.
Well, I don't know about that. We see, it's not just with Team Sky or Ineos Grenadiers they're called now, or
no, I'm being sarcastic, by the way.
I know, Johnny. I know well enough what your view on it, because it is a kind of thing where since I first was working in Russia, and I pointed out that doping's, there's a lot of doping on here, and I used to warn our athletes, tennis players especially, stay away from this person, because of who they are and what they do, and doping. Joe, do you regret doping?
Yeah, of course. Like, you regret participating in something illegal and, sullying the sport and blah, blah, blah. At the same time, I mean, there's no way to change what I did. You can't go back in time or anything like that. So, I mean, I just try to be honest about why I did it and what the impact was. And like it is or was, or it is what it is, like.
No, listen, you're right on that. And I mean, when we look at, like we see here, teammates, obviously on the left in yellow is Lance Armstrong, of course, his man, the guy who did an awful work, as you said. He was a phenomenal rider, an absolute animal on the road. Floyd Landis beside him, in happier times for both, I guess. And then, of course, this is when Floyd then was sort of out on his own and trying to go for it still. Joe, just on one thing,
in response to your question about regretting whether I regretted doping or not, ironically, one of, I'm not going to name him because I don't want to violate that confidence, but one of Lance's former teammates who didn't dope, I remember having a conversation with him a few years ago, and he regretted he didn't regret like not cheating, but he regretted not seeing how far he could have gone physically, because he did not dope and left the sport rather than dope, but admitted, to me, that he lamented not really knowing how much faster he could have been. And I remember thinking at that time in that conversation, yeah, well, at least I know that like I literally maxed my body out. Like, that's right, I barely even ride my bike anymore. Because I feel like, I'll never, ever, ever even come close to being as fast as I was then.
Joe, after that, after 2006 and that, did you lose your way a wee bit?
I was already lost.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I use a very Irish kind of expression. After 2006 and onwards, after kind of your career in cycling was effectively ended, did you lose your way a little bit? Did you kind of want to be around cycling but didn't know what to do next?
Yeah, I mean, I lost my way in the sense that, the thing that I had based my life around was no longer accessible to me, for sure. Which was, and again, going back to the question about doping, I think I regret like the opportunity cost of doping, because I mean, not to be a braggart or anything like that, but I mean, I was a fairly smart guy, academically gifted, went to university on a scholarship, had all the opportunity in the world, and kind of compromised it to be faster on a bike, to do something very ephemeral.
Do you think you could have, if like another couple of years, because at that time you were the Tour of Turkey, and I mean you in 2006, you were a sprinter, and a good sprinter as well. Do you think you could have gone a bit further if you hadn't been caught? Do you think you could have moved up a level, maybe gone into a Grand Tour?
Yeah, I don't know that I would have been able to finish a Grand Tour, but I mean, for sure, I mean, some of the guys I used to race with and beat here in the sprints have won Grand Tour stages, and so I don't have any doubt that I could have maybe won one, or at least been beaten very closely, like Boric Bozic beat me in Cuba in that one sprint. But
sorry for showing it again. I just again, it was the reaction is good.
I mean, I think that I was not. I mean, Lance Armstrong, Floyd Landis, those guys were at a natural level above me, and no amount of doping was going to make me into either of them. But yeah, I mean, I was fast enough to keep doing cycling. So,
Joe, in the situation you found yourself in, I mean, we know what sport is about. You, as we mentioned, like omerta, this kind of like code of silence is very, very strong. There's that. I deliberately didn't put it in, that picture of Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France doing this, to zip up.
Sure.
I mean, that has been used as such a meme now that I mean, I've used it, for example, on Twitter. One thing that I wanted to ask you, there's a couple of small things, just kind of like round up. And one is about, I'll go ahead and say it, like, you know, as a childhood hero, Sean Kelly, for example, who, this is you and him in 21 years ago. And he still looks like he get up on a bike and race.
Yeah, he looked so fit. He looked still so fit, man.
Yeah, I mean, the story of Sean Kelly, okay, he failed tests, but he said that it was because of decongestant, which we also heard last week Serena Williams saying as well, that when she failed a test or got a backdated TUE, it was because she needed decongestant to play. She needed lots of other things to play as well, but, you know, again, right. She's a lady who didn't take a test that she was going to fail. You know, Sean, a phenomenal racer. We always heard where he came up, cycled from his home in the Tipperary Waterford border. And it's sort of a typical thing for him was to go out with a flask of tea and a couple of sandwiches and cycle to Dublin and back, you know, like, you know, a couple of 100 miles or, well, 250 kilometers, like sort of round trip. The idols like that who you'd have met, and of course, as you said, that he bought you a pint, which I don't know if he's been stingy or cheap, but that's the first. You're the first person I know that he's actually bought a drink for. But anyway, you must have done good. You must have done good.
Maybe it was my American accent.
There you go. I knew you were Irish as well, so there you go. That's the thing. You look Irish. So, Joe, with people like this, when they are found out, you know, and I hate this thing of role models because that's a load of nonsense. But when they're found out, you said 50% of the people who would support you, you know, you've let them down by saying admitting your guilt. Does that make it better for a lot of these people just to stay quiet? Because they're not all Lance Armstrong, because he's still making huge amounts of money and he's as popular as ever. You know, he's been cleaned up. But if Sean Kelly came out and said, by the way, I did do X, Y, and Z, would people care now?
Yeah, would people care? That's a great question. I mean, what incentive does he have? Had he done anything to admit to it now at this point? Like, I mean, I can't speak for the Irish public, but I mean, I don't think that. Do people really think that, you know, the era that he raced in, that he wasn't doing the same thing as Paul Kinnage or, you know, any of these other guys? But I mean, yeah, I know I wouldn't expect him or anyone else from back then to just willingly admit it, especially not if, you know, they had anything that they perceived left to lose.
Well, I mean, we're playing a moment like a clip. He works with Eurosport and different media, and of course, he's a multilingualist as well. Like he speaks different languages. He speaks French. I think he speaks Spanish as well. I mean,
he's part of the sports entertainment complex, right? Like those guys have every incentive not to talk about it. Like
he's making a living from it now, from
right.
You know, post cycling. Does it annoy you to see people, and not Sean, I mean, I could never be an Irish. Again, I'm excusing people who've doped, but does it annoy you to see people who have done far, far worse than you, and they're still kind of like apples of the public's eye?
No, you know, I don't take it personally. It doesn't, like, I'm definitely not embittered. It's kind of disappointing if you have any, like, hope or, you know, belief in like the nobleness of man or anything like that. But I mean, it is what it is. Like, people lie and cheat in everything, you know, not just in sport. And I mean, it doesn't surprise me that God, I mean, there's so much going on, right? Like, what incentive does the public even have to ask too many questions?
What incentive does the public have to ask too many questions? That is the great way to end up that part of it before we move on to a discussion about Lance Armstrong. Is he still a role model and hero? And is the term role model a load of nonsense? Also, to start off this next clip, the final part of part two of our conversation with Joe, we're going to play a Eurosport clip from coverage of the Vuelta de España. Alberto Contador is involved in it, and he, of course, was banned shortly after, and the result was wiped out. We had 2006, of course, we had Floyd Landis getting wiped out, and now Alberto Contador. And the questions about motor doping, something that a lot of purists of the sport react to even more, let's just say more, it's more difficult for them to take than actual chemical doping or blood doping. So this is the final part of the clip, just a few minutes left, and then we're going to go back and just discuss, well, basically this part of the conversation with Joe Papp.
Yeah.
True. Joe, in that, just before we move on to the last couple of pieces, is Lance Armstrong, is he still a hero in the USA?
Well, I don't think he's a hero at all. He's certainly, I mean, he's not really in the public eye anymore, except a very niche, like cycling interested community. But he's not. I don't think he's a hero. I can't think of anything like recently even that he did that was like noble, really, or worthwhile to comment on. Can you? I mean, he has his podcast, but like
that's it. I mean, when you see how he's treated people who bled for him, like Floyd Landis and other people as well. Like, I mean, we know from Betsy Andreu and so many people that really, helped them. That he just basically betrayed and sort of like threw him aside. But again,
I met with his attorney in Pittsburgh once, like just when Floyd first, denounced him publicly, and they were hoping to build a public assassination of Floyd to try to discredit him. And I mean, they're not good people. They're entertaining people. They can be amusing people. I don't think that they're good people, though, necessarily.
Okay, and on that note, I just going to one thing that I wanted to second last piece. I know we've been on a long time, Joe, and we will be breaking this down into two parts. So we'll see how this works out now. This is a video, okay, and I just want you to watch, listen, and comment on it, okay, because you're someone who knows what this is all about. So I'll just play it for you. This is from 2011. Okay, so 2011 Giro d'Italia.
As we see Contador going for a bike change, and he's doing this a lot in the last couple of days. He seemed to change the bike every day. I was reading in one of the papers that he changed yesterday again, and the day to Etna he also changed. So he seemed to have this bike specially for the final, and he makes the change every day when it's the mountaintop finish.
Why would you do that these days, Sean? Because I mean, surely it's certainly in the past when there weren't weight restrictions on bikes, where the UCI didn't have the 6.8 kilo rule. You could see why they might change bikes. They might change for a lighter frame, lighter wheels, different geometry, whatever. Why would you bother doing it now?
Well, that's an interesting one, because the bikes are so lightweight now. They're at the minimum, or very close to the minimum, which is the UCI regulation. Where in the past 15, 20 years ago it wasn't the case. Maybe he's got a motor in there and the battery goes low about the halfway point, so he has to just get on a new bike and new batteries.
Very possible.
He has a motor in the bike, so he has to get new batteries. Now, I've commented this before, when you see cyclists, especially after, in the middle of a stage, after going over a mountain, they change the bike. Is motor doping a thing, Joe?
Well, I mean, we know at least a couple of people have been caught doing it, right? So it's surely a thing. I don't think it's a lot easier to take an injection than to, use a bike with a motor in it and then hide it before you get to the finish.
That is true. I mean, one thing that's been sort of like leveled at Lance Armstrong, and again, I've interviewed the people who've kind of investigated this and who sort of presented this as fact, that he was motor doping as well. And I always wondered, was it kind of this, again, as I mentioned before, this kind of an axe to grind with an American coming in and winning their race in France, for example? Are there suspicions that Lance would have motor doped as well, Joe?
Not to my knowledge. No, I mean, I don't think that's a credible accusation.
Okay.
But I don't have any specific insight though that would allow me to answer definitively. But yeah, no,
Okay. No.
who knows? Maybe he did though, right? Like, I'm certainly not going to say he didn't. And isn't that what isn't that what sucks about pro cycling and trying to like be a fan of it? Like, there is such a suspension of disbelief that is like mandatory if you know anything about the sport in order to even watch like the highlights of a stage. You know, like, I mean, I watched the Tour this year for the first time in forever, and by the end of it, it was like not so fun to watch because you look at some of these stages and say like, yeah, really, like the guy who normally is a dude who pulls on the flats is instead like pulling 2 hours in the mountains, and just, and nobody ever tests positive either. I mean, okay, yeah, finally Quintana, got DQ'd just this week, but I mean, really, like in all these years, like there's nobody high level ever tests positive. I mean, that's not, in my opinion, a sign of like how clean cycling is.
Just in case anyone wonders, Isel, turn your camera back on. This is a different shirt. It's not the same shirt I wore. I haven't been wearing it for a couple of weeks. So just I got two of them from Marks and Spencer or Primark. I can't remember, but they're the same shirts.
Call it pennies. Don't call it Primark.
That's it. Sorry. Yeah, I'm still too European, so you're right. It is pennies. Okay. Just a quick comment on that, Isla. Start off with you. You a line at the very end caught you what he said.
So I suppose Joe, so much of that hit the nail on the head again and again. But he used the line that it's so sad that watching cycling there has to be a suspension of belief in what you're seeing, because the question, I suppose, of even when you're discussing Lance and the potential of motor doping there, we obviously can't say anything definitively, but now when anyone watches cycling, we're looking for what can be believed through the prism of everything we know about cycling. So when we look at cyclists now, if they're testing clean, they must be motor doping. And I actually think to a huge extent, motor doping is actually much harder because you have a level of plausible deniability if you're caught with something in your system. You can always come up with a reason why it was there. No matter how incredulous or unbelievable your excuse, you can always try. Anything in your system, you can try and talk away. You can't talk away a motor in your bike, no matter what you try. And that's why it's a different level of doping in such a blatant manner. But I think Joe really explains so much about how, like, when we look at sports now, we look at everything looking, and particularly pro cycling, through that prism of they can't be believed. So let's try and believe them, but let's cut down the reasons why they wouldn't be doping. We don't start thinking they're not doping. We start thinking they are. Alan doesn't realise he's on mute. So this has been a really lovely time for myself and Andrew.
Yes, yeah, you're right. Without my voice is even better. What I was going to say, simply to say, was that we're actually the guilty until proven innocent instead of the other way around. So it's basically switched everything around 180. The other issue as well is I remember in 95, 96, 97 in America, there was the home run derby basically to try and break Roger Maris's home run record. And you got guys who were souped up on drugs. And I remember just thinking, they're doping. It's clear. You can look at them. You can see the way Mark McGuire is built and the hole up in his neck, and I remember my friend's dad saying, "Doesn't matter. We have." As he said, he's a lifelong baseball fan in Canada. He said, "Look, I don't believe anything I see, but it's a bit of fun to watch on an afternoon," because he was retired. Andrew Flint, what caught you with Joe's, the parts we watched today?
Well, weirdly enough, it was, for me, it was almost the sort of resignation of, I expected him to be, when you asked him, are you angry about those who are guilty of far more serious, more long-lasting offences who have got away with it, I expected him to be angry. And it was the fact that he's just sort of, well, what can I do about it? There are so many cases of this, I assume, is what he was getting at, that was why he wasn't so angry. But it tells you the picture of how many variations there are of people of people doping. But what I found very interesting was the way he said, "Look, you still got to be incredibly talented, incredibly athletic," and it's one of those things. Every time we come back to the discussion of doping, some people, I think, we talk about the suspension of disbelief, the level of understanding. You take whatever form of, whether it's you clean your blood, you take something else. It doesn't transform you into a world-class athlete. You've got to be 90% of a world-class athlete already. And when you've got someone like Joe just sort of deflated in that way, I thought that was actually really impactful. It really kind of hit it home for me that, I mean, he seemed realistic. He said, look, I was never going to get to, the absolute very top, but what could I have achieved? And as a sportsman, you'd have to imagine that's got to be one of the most gnawing sensations, to never quite know what you could have achieved because of so many factors. And that resignation, I thought, was quite sad, but quite a damning indictment of the sport and of people's understanding of it.
Look, we see it all the time. We watch rugby, and of course, New Zealand, they lost to Argentina this weekend, which puts Ireland's series win into perspective. But at the same time, when we look at how it goes on, we do have to suspend belief from what we're watching. But let's be honest with it. We're still going to watch the sports. We're still going to follow sports. We're still going to be engaged in sports. We're still going to speak about sports because sports are amazing. Sports are life. And sports fans really don't care, because Man City fans will laugh. Ha ha, Liverpool, you're all doping, you all have asthma. Man City, who are coached by Pep Guardiola, not Ped, well, Ped in the best possible sense, Guardiola. And
Right.
the team who basically skip tests, as I mentioned, Serena Williams doesn't take a test that she's going to fail. And the same with Man City. Same with West Ham United, the teams I followed since I was 3 years of age. But I still follow them. So,
Alan, this is, I think, the key point here. I don't even think that people genuinely don't believe. I think people are more aware than we realise, but they just don't care. You want to see a storyline. You want to be entertained, and I think people are so far gone that they just simply don't care how they're entertained.
Yeah, I think you care when you're on the receiving end of a loss because someone, or if you buy someone, that's when it becomes personal. I also care insanely when people dope animals. Waterford Crystal, an Irish horse. I'm not over it. I never will be.
Explain, Isold, hold on. Isold, explain that, because that was the saving grace of an Olympics for Ireland. And it turned out that they had rubbed stuff, they had desensitized the forelocks of the horse so that he wouldn't feel the pain of hitting the bar, so he could train. This was normal. This is normal in show jumping. This is normal in horse racing. It's normal.
Normal.
I would just say, go ahead.
I suppose I think the thing is, every competition, what you view as normal in and outside of competition are totally different. When you're on one stage, you know the rules, and that's the thing. I think it's very galling when you're representing your country, particularly in an individual sport, and you're aware of the rules. There's no excuse for it, in the sense that you know the ramifications when you're caught. And I felt bad. The horse probably got his medal taken back. Okay, I'm very sensitive about Waterford Crystal as a horse. I just think at that level of elite sport, and let's face it, show jumping in particular, you're coming from an elite background. You're not coming from a background where you worked your way up. So there's no excuse for not observing the rules when you're aware of them. And we do suspend belief. Andrew has it so spot on. We look at sports and we look at what we're seeing. And as you said about baseball, we don't care if we see the result we want. But by the same token, we don't like being manipulated by people. So that's why Lance Armstrong galls so much with people, because we feel he took all the good of his story and destroyed it, not just his story.
This is the same thing with with Keane, when he not Keane, giving Keane, I blanked his family name, who doped Waterford Crystal, the horse. Pardon?
Keane O'Connor.
Keane O'Connor, thank you. Yeah. Sorry, Keane McGibney. I know he's watching, so my apologies on that. So Keane O'Connor.
Just to be clear, aside from a legal perspective, Keane McGibney has not doped any horses.
Knowingly. Or that we know of. Keane, I'm saying that we know of. I'm not letting you off the hook just yet. But anyway, right. Look, with that was a moment when they had rescued a terrible Olympics for Ireland by winning a medal. I was watching it live. I was thrilled. I grew up around horses. Show jump was huge in our house, in our families. It was really big. But we also, I remember my mum speaking about Harvey Smith, one of the kind of a semi-outsider of British show jumping. And they had put barbed wire onto the poles so the horses would lift their legs up going over because they knew that they would be cut. So barbarity towards animals is not just in Isel Cody's household towards Pornala. Okay, Isel, go ahead.
I've got one last thing. I would just like to say that Keane has actually done great work for Irish show jumping since. Moment of madness does not define a man. In his case, I don't think it was a systemic thing. So I'm just going to say that. And Nala is not tortured. She gets what she deserves.
On that note, I will quickly just move straight away. Keane McGibney said that Sia Khaleesi looks slightly different in 2022 than in 2013. That is very, very true, Keane. Thank you. Right, big fat filthy quiz. I'm going to make it easy for you guys to say 2 very simple things. You have to tell me what happened next, okay? You'll have an equal chance.
Isel, did you hear that? He said, I'm going to make it easy for you. What on earth do you think that is going to be? It's going to be absolute chaos. It's going to be worse than usual.
I'll come up with my guess now for what happens next without seeing them.
The first one is between Barbados and Grenada, a football match. Okay, so here we go. What happens next?
Now here's a weird one. Barbados versus Grenada in the Shell Cup 1994.
Barbados need to win by 2 clear goals to qualify for the final.
So Barbados need to win by 2 clear goals to qualify. What happened next? Andrew, I'll seize your return to us from holidays. I'm going to ask you first. What happened next?
Oh God, it was some mad rule where I think it was something to do if they're level on aggregate, then the home side get given a 2-0 win. There was some very weird specific rule that meant if they lost. Oh no, this is annoying because I know this one. Oh God damn it!
All right.
No, they were defending both goals because they got exactly the scoreline they needed, and they were trying to stop conceding and the other team scoring as well.
Okay, Isel.
11 men on the goal line protecting the goal.
You have actually mixed up 2 different matches. Well, no, these are actually Andrew is actually correct mostly, so Andrew gets the win of this one. So
well done, Andrew. Well done.
Now here's a weird one. Barbados versus Grenada in the Shell Cup 1994.
Barbados need to win by 2 clear goals to qualify for the final.
Right.
With the score at 2-0, Grenada pull one back, it's 2-1.
Right.
So Barbados need to take the game into extra time, where bizarrely goals count double.
I see.
Therefore, they score an own goal to take them to extra time, where they score the one they need.
Ah, yeah. No, I don't get it. Run that by me again.
Right, so Andrew, you got that win. So was it over a goal difference?
It was that was it. The extra time, double goals counted. Yeah.
There have been ones where the teams have been defending both goals. A team who are trying to score into their own goal, and your team have all. I think it was in the Tiger Cup in Thailand, as far as I remember. The Thai team, but okay. The next one, okay. The next one is even easier. Okay, it's a baseball one. You have to tell me what happens next. This is very, very easy.
Line drive right field. Over the glove of Grossman. Larnick had.
Okay, so line drive to center field with actually to right field. Went off his glove. Isel, what happened next?
I'm going to say he throws the ball. I'm going to say basically it ends up with a home run because he keeps making an absolute hames out of throwing the ball back.
Okay, that's quite good actually. I like that as an explanation. It's very entertaining. It's better than last week where you said it was going to knock somebody out with the ball, which you said last week. Andrew.
Option based on the crappy video you gave us last week to judge.
True. Andrew,
It's kind of annoying because Eastall's answer is quite similar to what I was going to come up with. I was going to say he overthrew it so much that it became a home run because he threw it into the crowd.
Ooh.
Which would have to be a fairly horrific mistake, admittedly.
Okay, let's see what happens next, and viewers can Keane said, sorry, I'll put it now. Keane said, right, this is the time of the Olympics. He was 14 at the time, and I have only ever given horses apples, as far as I know.
But he's still saying as far as he knows, so he's still not off the hook.
Yeah, he's not off. Okay, so we can now vote for who gets it right. So here we go. This is the full version of this clip.
Line drive right field. Over the glove of Grossman. Larnach had to hold up. He's going to be held there. And the Twins have filled the bases. And now Sano goes towards second. And that forces the runner from second. And now it's thrown away. One run will score, and the Twins are going to win the game.
Twice in a week. That's amazing.
Eastwood, I think you got it right, actually, because it wasn't a home run, but it was a missed throw, and then a second missed throw. Andrew, you were kind of right, except you said it went into the fields or into the thing. So, in fairness, Eastwood, you get the win on that one. But it's a draw, 1-1 draw. So,
quite the contest, Andrew.
Epic sporting contest.
It was a proper Spurs result, a 1-1 safe draw. So, on that note, I'll say that, okay, so the guys our folks have said that Klopp is not going to lose his job. He will still be there because there's no rest for him to move to, and also it's unlikely that he would. Also, our movie for next week will be Slapshot, the original Slapshot. Okay, so you have to watch it. This is an awesome movie. You're going to enjoy it. Isla, have you seen it?
No.
Andrew?
No, but I've got a feeling I'm going to give it 10 out of 10. Yeah,
this is Paul Newman at his very, very best. This is an iconic ice hockey movie from the 70s. You're going to love it. It's brilliant. It's ice hockey at its most brilliant. Okay, and next week, of course, we'll have part 3 of our chat with Joe Papp and a very special guest. We will have Kristen Worley on. We're going to discuss some of the issues facing trans athletes from a trans athlete's side. So on that note, I'd say, Isla, Cody, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Andrew, very, very welcome back into the pit that is Capital Sports 3.0.
Pit's the right word, but it's good to be back in it.
Okay, so on that note, I will say goodbye for now. Everyone to take care of yourselves. We'll play out for what, again, I believe this. I really am backing myself in this. We've done it right every single year. Who is going to win? Our guys are going to hang on the line just after we finish up, after we go off the broadcast. Say thank you to everyone who commented this evening as well. And RDS, as I said, that it is a superb movie. That is the truth. Okay, so we'll go out and say take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and most importantly is thank you very much for being with us tonight. So this is Capital Sports saying goodbye until next Sunday.
Good. Good.
I don't know, I saw nothing.
I really don't like this. I'm really disappointed, I have to say.
Hoffentlich